Hey friends, looks like a lot of behind the scene works from our tech and moderator group. So thank you for your feedback. Again, that's why we're soft start part deux. Um, Never know what's our equipment sometimes with the boat and everything. We sit for the season, and that's why we like to get out a couple days early and have those soft starts just to check in that everything's still connecting on both ends and everything working as we were remembering it should. So thanks to our cam ops and moderators and tech group behind the scenes managing those cameras for us and doing all the legwork. Just a lowly driver here, so all the credit goes to them. We're very grateful. Um, I see that Sugar Mama has popped onto our message board. Hello, welcome back. Good to see you. We've had a bit of a slow day today. It almost feels like the whales have been, taking a rest today. They were fairly active yesterday, but haven't seen a ton today. Little groups here and there seem to pop up, but then with our gray sky too, it is making them a little bit more challenging to see. And it had just started sprinkling here in Churchill, so now we're on the lookout through our rain-spattered glass while we continue to search for the whales. And in about our last half hour here, I think I'm going to head a bit closer to the port, see if we've got any of our buddies hanging out over there. And, looks to me like the tugboat might be back. In a very special event this morning, we saw the tugboat out in the bay, which we don't get to see very much, just a couple times a year. So if anybody tuned in late, you could go back to the footage from the beginning of the tour, and we got a really great close-up view of Captain Irving maneuvering the tugboat out in the bay, I think, as he's waiting for a ship. I guess it might not be coming in today if he's back at the dock, but maybe they were just getting it, making sure everything was in line with the boat, because they are expecting a ship this week. So probably just one of 2 or 3 ships that might be making an appearance in Churchill this season. Well, team, I figured with some of the slower action we've got here today, we still do have a resident beluga expert on the boat. Casey visiting from the Assiniboia Park Zoo, just really close to finishing her PhD, and has been just studying beluga whales the whole time. So I thought, well, we've got her here. Let's find out some stuff that maybe we don't know, as we're just, beluga observers. So if you don't mind sharing, I was just kind of wondering, with all the stuff you've done, you've been up north, sounds like you've been to Nunavut, Baffin Island areas, obviously some research out of Winnipeg. What's been one of your favorite experiences that you've been through in all these years of studying beluga whales? I just double check your mic's on.
So I would have to say one of my favorite experiences was the first time going up into the field in Nunavut, and the belugas there are a lot more hesitant about people. They don't necessarily like people in boats.
Interesting.
Not at all like the belugas here. And so in order to kind of get them to come back into the area, we had to cut the engine on the boat and just kind of drift.
Oh, very
And
much the opposite of here then, because we
very
feel
much.
like they like to play in the bubbles from the motor.
Yeah. And they still wouldn't approach really the boat because they could hear the water hitting the hull, and they knew that something
What
was
kind of
there.
boats were they?
Just
Like-
similar to this.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, not big at all, but metallic, and we think that they could probably hear that. But yeah, I would say definitely one of the most memorable experiences was cutting the engine and just hearing all of the vocalizations come up through the boat.
Oh yeah, because
So-
it like echoes with the metal.
Yeah.
Oh,
So we
wild.
couldn't see any whales, but we could hear like dozens of them. It sounded like just so loud. I actually took some recordings on my phone, and it sounds like it's like a hydrophone underwater. Like, it's just
Oh,
so loud.
amazing.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, this may be an ignorant question, but I know we've got a lot of people from the States and stuff who are moderators and participating in our citizen science who don't know, everything about Canada. We've put a map to show where Churchill is and where the river is and where that is within Canada. But none of it is actually one of our newest territories, if you will. It's not one I learned about in school, but it is a territory now. I know we've got some major cities in there with planes similar to the size that come to Churchill. So I'm assuming you just took a regular plane up. Did you then have to take like alternative vehicles or helicopters to get where you needed to go for the whales?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, it takes a little bit longer to get there because typically the flights are only from places like Ottawa. So we have to get to Ottawa, stay in Ottawa for a night, and then try to get up there. And as probably the same in Churchill, the flights are canceled quite often. So sometimes
Due to
you're there-
weather?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Sometimes
Okay.
you're there 4 days later. But yeah, essentially we get to the community by the plane, and then to get to the Belugas, it's about a 2-3 hour boat ride.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
In like a non-covered boat, I'm
Yes.
guessing as well. So that could be quite chilly.
Yes.
Wow. 2 hours just to get, is it to an estuary like the river?
Yeah, for them it's a fjord, but essentially, yeah, an estuary. So they've got a lot of like glacial water coming in. And
So
bringing in-
I'm familiar with fjords. If I could describe it to somebody that's not, I would say it's a waterway kind of between mountains or ice.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know if there's like a height restriction to define it as a fjord, but like how high was the ice or mountain as you went up that river?
Oh, that's a good question.
Like giant or like smaller?
It was actually smaller, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not like kind of the typical fjords that you would think about. And
I'm thinking like Norway
yeah.
fjords
Yeah.
or like, but there's a lot in British Columbia too.
Yeah.
More, smaller hills and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I don't know what the requirement is because yeah, it didn't seem all that high. But
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just like a waterway in between two bodies of land.
Pretty
Let's
much,
call
yeah.
it that.
Yeah.
So you've got to go 2 hours up the river, possibly in frigid temperatures, and then you're getting to an estuary.
Yeah, so we're going in a sound actually. So yeah, not as protected as a river, unfortunately. So yeah, if there was any sort of wind, we couldn't get up there, really. And I should say, I mean, most of our fieldwork was actually working on bowhead whale research. So those were kind of all over the sound. So that didn't require as much of a journey. But to get to the Belugas, yeah, it was 2 hours, 3 hours.
And would it be a correct assumption then that the Belugas are also traveling up this fjord from the more open Arctic waters to get to a protected area to do their calving and whatnot?
Yeah, so the population that I studied in Nunavut, they're actually one of 5 Beluga populations that don't have these huge migrations that we see.
Oh,
in others.
okay.
Yeah, especially like Western Hudson Bay has some of the biggest migrations. But they essentially stay in the same area throughout the year. They're just moving kind of offshore or south or wherever the ice doesn't build up for the winter. And then as soon as the ice clears, they're back up into the fjord or the estuary.
Okay. Is that, you make direct reference to ice. Is it, you think, mostly ice related or with the food and nutrition that comes with that ice or the fish migrations, I guess?
It's a really good question. That was one of the questions for my thesis, actually.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, and we actually found that they were migrating way before the ice even came in. So completely the opposite of what we thought. We thought that they would stay in their summer area as long as they could, but they're actually leaving way before. So we think it might be due to prey. They're kind of going for different fish in a different season. It's also, in different populations, that's not true. So in some populations, they do wait for the ice, and then they come back as soon as the ice melts. And unfortunately, in my population, we didn't really have the data to look at the spring migration. So it could be that as soon as the ice melts, they're coming back in. But yeah, for the fall migration, they're out of there way before the ice.
Interesting. I wonder if that has any relation to, like, we gotta get out before the ice, in case they could get socked in, essentially, because if it's like a sound or a river, once it's in, and they still need to obviously breathe through the ice, which means they need holes.
Yeah, it very well could be that, because especially in that area of the ocean, the ice essentially gets blown up, and so the first place that it does build up is their summer habitat. So yeah, it could be that they want to be very cautious and kind of get out of there.
Kind of like here, just hearing the little things you have to say about it, really similar to Churchill kind of area with the ice blowing in here first, and also having belugas. That's wild.
Yeah. Belugas can travel in areas where there's 9/10 ice. They're really good at finding the holes and making their way through it. And sometimes they prefer it. If there's killer whales outside of the ice, they're going to choose to go into the ice.
Yeah.
But yeah, they definitely need to be able to find those breathing holes.
I'm just going to sidebar here really quickly. So you're speaking about beluga populations, and one of 5 that doesn't migrate very far, and our population here in the Churchill River do migrate. Correct me if I'm wrong. There used to be beluga whales in the St. Lawrence River, but not now. Is that a true thing? That's a population that's no longer in that area?
They're actually still there.
Are they?
There's not many. I think there's 1,000, 1,200 maybe.
Okay. And is that the furthest south beluga whale population that we know of then?
Yes, I believe that's the furthest south, yeah.
Oh, cool. Because I don't know much about that. Do they get ice there at all? I guess it would kind of come in from the ocean, but...
Yeah, I think they get a bit of ice. They are one of the 5 that don't have that big migration, so they just move a little bit, I think east in the river. But yeah, they definitely are facing their own threats. There's a lot of shipping in that area. Yeah. It's hard for them to vocalize to each other in that kind of environment, so yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why I thought maybe they weren't there anymore. Maybe it was just drastic declining numbers, and they thought maybe they weren't there, but then they spotted a couple.
Yeah, definitely not doing well. But actually, fun fact about that population.
Oh, we like fun facts here.
I don't know if you heard about this, but they actually adopted a narwhal in that population.
Oh, maybe I read something about this. Yes, please tell the whole story, start to finish. The viewers will love this. We like to tie in narwhals where we can.
So I think this was about 8 years ago, maybe less. But anyway, they spotted a narwhal that had clearly gotten lost. Narwhal are not supposed to be that far south. And it was in St. Lawrence, and they actually spotted it in with a pod of belugas. So they think that it's a male narwhal because it does have a tusk. And yes, it was in a group of other adults, which we think were adult male belugas. And it seemed like they had kind of adopted it as one of their own, and they were traveling with it. I think it's still there. Last time I checked was 2022, so it had been there for quite a while, and
cool.
It's still just bouncing around.
Part of the family.
Yeah,
I like it.
And it's interesting because they might have had to teach him different ways to forage, because narwhal typically go for different species and.
Oh, for food.
Yeah.
What, like different fish or?
Yeah, so I think they typically go for deeper species. Narwhal also don't have teeth like belugas.
Yeah.
So yeah, just like a completely different.
Yeah, because their tusk, if you will, is actually a tooth.
Yes.
But yeah, I guess I didn't really know if they had like molars and stuff. So if anybody's seen the underwater beluga cam, often the belugas will like open their mouths and like try to chew on it. So we have seen like some really good footage of their molars. Are they called molars?
I guess so.
The teeth? I don't know. They look like molars anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I didn't think that maybe the narwhal wouldn't have teeth in their mouth.
Yeah, it just has basically the 2 teeth, and the left one usually erupts from the front of its face. If it's a male, or 1 in 10 females, something like that.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah, it happens.
they actually found a skull of a narluga, a narwhal and beluga had mated. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, there was reports, I believe it was in Greenland, of a hunter who said that he had harvested this whale that didn't look like any whale he'd ever seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And so a few years ago, researchers went to get the skull from him and did some testing, and yeah, it was a hybrid. And you can look at pictures online if you Google Narluga skull. It's really cool. So it had a tusk, but it also has teeth, but they're kind of like jagged and like they go every direction, and
Like there's a little bit of gene, I don't want to say
wrong,
mutation, but
yeah.
that's really similar what happens with polar bears and grizzly bears. So there's,
yeah.
I think, 8 bears that I think a female grizzly or a female polar bear had mated with a grizzly. So I think there's 8 of them that the scientists have found, but they're the problem is they don't fit anywhere because polar bears, water, like
Right.
not a land mammal by any means. Grizzly bears opposite, and my understanding from our expert scientists in that division is that they're not quite healthy bears.
Yeah.
And they don't really, maybe some mental problems. I don't know how we classify that in wildlife, but yeah, just some things that aren't making sense because they are very, very different, and their genes are different. They need different things.
Right.
So I imagine maybe similar to the narwhal or the narluga.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a little scary looking with jagged teeth like that. I don't know.
Yeah, the skull is super interesting. Yeah. So I don't know, but with the narwhal in the St. Lawrence population, I think people are keeping an eye on it.
Do they know if it's a boy or a girl?
We assume it's a boy because it does have a tusk, but
It could be, yeah.
Be a female.
Well, yeah. Then I guess it'd be easier to mate with lady belugas there, huh? Well, you never know. That'll be something. I'm gonna Google that skull when we get out of here. That sounds pretty neat. Thank you so much for sharing this. See, there's all kinds of information. You just gotta like peel back the layers of the onion. So you said your favorite thing was going up north and hearing the sounds once you turn the motor off. What have you learned about beluga whales that surprised you the most? Maybe this is going to take you back to when you first started researching. I feel like I learn something every year that I'm like, wow, I had no idea. As an expert in the field, what has surprised you the most?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I might have 2. One of them was learning about kind of the social bonds that the whales form. So in the photo ID project I was working on, we identified whales over 4+ years, and we find that they're with the exact same group every year. So clearly they've formed these bonds. We think that they're all males, so they're probably not related. So yeah, kind of
like a friend group, really.
Friend. Yeah.
Neat. Okay, yeah, because I was going to assume it was families, but okay.
No, I don't think that they're related, but yeah, especially given the size of the group, that would be a big family. But then the other one, which I was just learning this year from Stefan at Assiniboine Park, was how the curved pectoral fins on the belugas, so the fins on the sides, sometimes curl up. You can see it on Zooniverse if you go check it out. But he was saying that is likely males.
Yes.
Males have more curved fins.
I remember him talking about this hypothesis he had last year, and he said, we've got this hypothesis, and we're looking to like verify it with the photos.
Yeah.
So interesting. We'll have to maybe describe what we're talking about a little bit more on a heavy beluga whale day.
Yeah.
And then we can get all the viewers online to be on the lookout for the curvature of the fin. You really need to see like a photo or an example of what that means, I think. But
Definitely.
that's very exciting that's been, almost confirmed kind of thing.
Well, not yet, but yeah. But even just hearing that from him, because in a lot of populations we're not seeing this underwater footage, so we would never see the curved pectoral fin. So yeah, kind of a unique insight from this population.
Awesome. That's really cool. Just on the topic we were talking about here, Camops Sonata, one of our moderators, has just noted a question about narwhals and belugas. Do they have any health complications that you guys have seen from tooth decay? Or do we know, do their teeth have enamel? Are they similar to human teeth? Have you seen any of that with skulls and, dissection of potential bodies?
Yeah. So in terms of health complications, we don't think so. I mean, they could get an infection just like us, but I don't know of any, causes of death or something where it's been a tooth infection. But we know that belugas definitely get, their teeth get worn down over time. And I mean, the way that we age belugas is usually by their teeth. So if you slice the tooth in half, you essentially get what are called growth layer groups. So it's a layer upon layer, kind of like rings in a tree. And so you can count the layers and count how old that beluga is.
Interesting.
But as the whales get older and their teeth get worn down, we can't count all of the layers because they're not there anymore. So yeah, that's one of the problems that we see is the teeth being worn down.
Are the teeth in like human teeth? Like, I know that teeth are a huge component in identifying DNA and people can trace back dental records and stuff like that. Would that be the same for belugas? Like, if you had some sort of DNA sample, you could use the teeth from a corpse or whatever to be like, oh, that's that beluga we tested. That's not from one time. Like,
Right.
Would that equate together?
Yeah, you could pull DNA from a tooth depending on kind of the state of the tooth and what's attached to it. And yeah, you can get a lot of information about kind of the history of the whale, like tree rings again. You can tell if it was a dry year or a wet year, things like that. So
No way.
yeah.
Cool. So like their diet and like the health of the whale, is that kind of what you're?
Yeah, kind of more general health, I guess. And they can look at things like when the whale was weaned. So they can tell when it started like taking in solid food, taking in fish.
Oh wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah,
So that's sort of helping you determine that break from the weaning to the adolescent. Neat. We were
Yeah.
talking about that today. That's so fun.
And I think it's probably easier to do a narwhal when you've got the tusk because it's a lot easier to see the layers there. But yeah, you can do it with beluga too.
Cool. Oh, I just had a question. I lost it. Darn it. I lost it. Okay. Oh, you know what I was going to say? I remember now. I was just thinking about the specific wording that was used, tooth decay. And when I think tooth decay in humans, I'm like, this is from candy. Like, this is from us not managing our health and things like that. Like, I start to think, I'm sure there's other ways that bacteria build up or something, right? If you had like a misshapen tooth, but I don't imagine there's a lot of animals in the wild having that problem because, they're eating that raw diet. Like humans, when we end up with tooth decay, it's kind of our own fault. Like,
Right, yeah.
because we're taking on too much sugar or whatever. I don't know. Like, I don't think there's any sugary snacks for the belugas in the sea. So I wonder, it would probably be quite rare to see
I think so, yeah.
tooth decay, short of some, piece of seaweed what gets
Right.
caught and like then there's a bacteria buildup. I don't know, but
Yeah, I think it's just more getting worn down over time, not like a cavity or anything.
and
like
then
that.
for me, how are these teeth getting worn down? Like, is just the fish diet takes its toll?
Yeah, it's a good question because belugas don't typically chew.
Yeah.
So it's a good question. It must just be that they live so long that
Yeah.
eventually, yeah.
Have we changed our age range for belugas? Because I think, we were saying like an average of 50 up to 80. Are we now thinking that maybe it's a little bit longer than we first suspected?
I think that they have found a whale with, I believe it was 49 layers.
Oh,
so
wow.
that would have been at least 98 years old. And
Oh.
again, some of those layers would have been worn down over time probably. So it could be longer. I mean, we know that bowhead whales live to over 200, so as another Arctic species. Maybe they're also very long-lived.
Yeah, that's really interesting, that length of time, the knowledge that must be acquired and the way the climate and the earth is changing so quickly in the lifespan of a whale, right?
Yeah.
If something is 100 or 200 years ago, like we think about where civilization was, and I mean the temperature of the water and all those things would be really different.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's got to be a really interesting thing when they think about like generationally passing that knowledge down. Like elephants the same way, you know, the matriarchs teaching their young and living for so long to like know the paths and the routes and this is safe and that's not safe. How much that's changed over time. I always think that'd be confusing for animals. Like even the bears, like, oh, you know, we come here and this is where you go on the ice and, you know, come along little baby bear and I'm going to show you how to hunt. But then little baby bear gets older and within a couple of years, like the ice isn't where it's supposed to be and they don't quite know what to do because I mean, bears are more solitary than belugas, so they're kind of on their own after a couple of years. Like at least it's really nice to see that sort of family and friend dynamic in that group population because they can, I mean, they seem smart enough to communicate and figure out solutions. So not every species has that luxury, I guess. Well, interesting. That's, oh, what a fun little conversation here. I'm really glad that we were able to take a minute here. I know it's been a little bit of a slow day for the whales and the camera viewers out there, but hopefully we were able to share some information. It's been really great talking to Casey today. And I honestly can't wait to have you back. I think we'll hopefully see you next week and we will meet your other zoo partner. And her name again?
Courtney.
Courtney will be on the boat next week too. So I'm going to sign off with Casey here, and I think we'll start making our way back towards the port. It has stopped raining, so that's nice. Hopefully we won't get caught in the rain on our on our way out. So thank you so much for joining us and being so great with the questions. And I promise you, more days on the boat equal more beluga whales.
Can't wait. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I'm looking forward to next week.
Awesome. I also want to send a thank you to all our moderators out there and the tech people behind the scenes. I know we had a couple camera glitches today, but again, soft start, learning what we need to and working out the problems and working out the kinks. So thanks to everybody behind the scenes. We do appreciate you and all the great questions. Thank you. It's awesome to see our moderators jumping in on those discussion boards, and we retain this information, and I feel like we just learn more and more each year. So thank you so much for engaging with us. We really appreciate it, and it helps our day be a little bit more fun as well. The most important people we have to shout out today, of course, is everybody at explore.org and Polar Bears International for providing us with the opportunity to execute this project and getting us out on the water. Two amazing organizations that have just ultimately changed my life. So I'm so grateful for both of them and everybody else who's been just viewing our footage today. Again, a little bit of a slow day. I feel like the whales were taking a break, but do tune in again on Monday. It is Arctic Sea Ice Day, and I think the weather's looking really good for next week. We are not running the Beluga boat on Saturday and Sunday this year, so we will hope to see you back on Monday for Arctic Sea Ice Day, where we'll have Captain Kyron on the boat, and I believe we will have two of our special guests from the ATZ, Casey and her partner. So make sure you've got it marked on your calendar. Our tide time that day, we're going to be on the water from 1:15 to 5:15 Central Time here in Manitoba. So Monday afternoon, based on our time schedule. If you have a time change to deal with, just note that that's 1:15 to 5:15 Central Time. And then I will be back joining you on Tuesday next week. So can't wait to catch up with you guys then. I'll be tuning in for Arctic Sea Ice Day, where we celebrate Arctic sea ice. And if we do have a wind shift, we might even be able to find a little bergy bit or any floating ice is nice to see on Arctic Sea Ice Day anyways. So that is all for me. This is Captain Tara signing off. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you next week. Bye.